Hello again. Welcome to the Thought Variable. We're here in October. Finally, it's the fall season. And the fall season's one of my favorites. Not too hot, not too cold. But also, for some reason, it makes us all think of a more open ideas. I don't know about all, okay. But a lot of people. The idea of ghosts, the idea of Halloween, the idea of leaves falling from the trees, skies becoming gray. There's a lot of bright colors in the fall season, but as well, it gets very, very dark at night. You get orange moons, you get different, animals come out, others go away, and it's sort of one of those times to me when, for some reason, I enjoy it. I always have. I get up, late at night, walk around outside. Maybe you've tried this. Wherever you are, find a place that you can enjoy nature. An old house is also very spooky at times. Depending on the weather, it can be very, very quiet, and you just don't know. So I thought I'd start with October and tell at least a few stories. Now, these are the stories according to my recollection, my account, my memory. Somebody may say, whatever, but I'm going to tell the stories anyway, because this is how I remember them. Whether they happen or not, up to you to believe, but I would encourage, use your imagination, and I'm definitely not attempting to deceive or lie about anything. This is 100% what I believe happened, okay? So I'm not making any of this up. You can decide for yourself, though, if you think it's too crazy. I've already said that I have an active imagination. However, this, to me, is what I experienced, so here we go. When I was young, I grew up I mostly grew up in a very old house that was made out of rock, and it was on a very isolated property that apparently had some sort of history. I don't 100% know the history, but here's what I was told. I was told that there was some sort of, ceremony or rituals noticed by others through candlelights seen through the windows, and people knew to stay away from this house. They knew that there was an old man that lived there that may have done some things that were unethical and may have been doing some type of some sort of ritual to do with either Satanism or satanic or otherwise occult, because one, I grew up in West Texas, I may have mentioned, and you can look into this, but the area was well known to be sort of satanic capital of America. I mean, I wouldn't say the capital, but some may have said. It was there were the presidents of the Knights of the Satan Service were there. I remember seeing people wearing pentagram necklaces, people talking about sacrifices made at the local lakes and at the local bonfires in the middle of the night. Different properties that were just known to be either haunted or to stay away from them because of certain individuals that practiced either witchcraft or, I guess, the Mexican form, cupandero, which is, their form of witch doctor or witchcraft sort of thing. However, what I'd like to say is I grew up, and when I say that, you're talking about like 4 years old, whatever, was told that I would, and myself would see things, hear things, wave at kids that were not there in the yard. I told my parents, and as well, I would hear voices of kids playing. I distinctly remember hearing this, okay? Still, I remember going out, I would get excited, running out thinking, oh, there's kids visiting, I want to go play, and I would run out there and look for them in the yard and could not find them. When you do go outside my yard, there was a cellar, was underground, made of cement. I guess most people would call it either a storm cellar because it was sort of a tornado area, with a really old, scary old shack above it, and then, various different things around the yard, giant trees, another old house, and another old barn, and then, the attic itself seemed very, like it felt scary. The yard felt scary, everything at night. And I would hear things, and for example, I was in the back bedroom where you have to understand our original trailer house that we moved to there burnt down, and we were forced to then move into this rock house that was unfinished. And it was actually kind of mostly rock on the inside too. Very quiet because the stones were very thick. These are real stones, it's not fake. However, the walls were unfinished. You could see the rock. You could, we had a really old, central heater that was in my room, so I could see the fire lit gas heater at night, and it would be kind of spooky. There were holes in the ceiling where I could see cracks into the attic. They were also kind of spooky because I felt someone was looking down at me through those. Also, when I saw the windows, looked out the windows that were very old, and I often felt there was someone in the yard, someone outside. You might say it's a feeling. Other times, I would hear things. I would hear an old man coughing in the kitchen. I would see light flicker from underneath my doorway, and I was curious. I was very scared, of course, but I would get up late at night. I would try to sneak as quietly as possible because I thought I could faintly hear either a radio or a television on, something, and then a light from under the door. And I would open the door, and then I would see the television screen turn off. These are the old tube TVs, so you could see the little ball of light then slowly fade away. And it seemed like someone was in there watching television, doing something, turned it off. And then, like I said, sometimes you would hear something like moving around, footsteps, knocks, coughing. And this was very frequent, not a one-time occurrence. Some other things that happened where I would often wake up, and I believe they call this sleep paralysis, where I would wake up, my eyes were open, I could vaguely, see the room. It was very dark, of course, but I could not move. I couldn't wake up, I couldn't speak, and I would scream, and I would use all of my willpower sometimes. And when I did use all of my willpower, at some point I would break through whatever this paralysis was, and then I would scream for real sometimes. And of course, maybe someone would come in the room, what's going on? And I would just have to say, I had a nightmare. And some people say that night terrors or nightmares or sleep paralysis is just a thing, just a phase, or just a a chemical reaction in the brain, whatever. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Because there's other stories of different external forces or entities that could be causing this. We don't know, right? Alls I know is I experienced it, and it was not uncommon, like I said, when I was very young, all through my preteen years, and maybe even going up into just the barely 13, 14, whatever. But all that whole time, I would often wake up, at midnight, 1 a.m., 3 a.m. I would sometimes, and it happened very frequently in a row, I would wake up, and my father had built a wooden toy box that sat next to my bed. And I distinctly remember being pushed. Now, I'm not messing around. I did not roll. I did not jump. I did not do this myself. I was pushed off my bed and pushed so hard that my face perfectly smashed into the wooden toy box, the corner of the box, to the point it gave me a black eye. Like it hit me really hard, and I remember it was so painful I was crying. But I was also so scared that I didn't know what to do about it. Also, I just will mention, I was scared to get up and turn the light on because I knew different things. For example, my father didn't 100% wire the house correctly. The electrical was not enclosed, and there was electricity moving down the wires, even the neutral wire, and with an open, there were no switch plates, so with the switch being open, if you reached in the dark, you're most likely going to get shocked, and I often did. However, that wasn't as much what I was scared about. That was part of it, but another part is when you do turn it on, and then you're like, oh, okay, now the lights are on, the room's very quiet, it still seems kind of spooky, especially outside, and when the lights are on, and you're outside, and then I think whoever is outside can see inside very perfectly, and then when you turn the lights off, now you are nearly blind because your eyes are still adjusting. You're standing there in the dark, way too far away from the bed or wherever you need to go, and there's so many things that you could bump into or that could be there. Sometimes you have to stand there in the dark and stare. And sometimes I would see things. I would see things move. I would see things standing in the corner. You couldn't quite make it out, but definitely seeming like a person, okay? I can't be 100%. I won't say that I saw an apparition of any sort. When I speak of ghosts, when I was in my youth, I don't see them as, this friendly white cloud floating around or walking down the stairs. No. To me, it seemed more how they describe a demonic entity or something like that was definitely had a shape and had a feeling that they gave you, and they were not just casually doing whatever they want to do. They were definitely intent and focused on me. At least that's what I felt, okay? I felt this focus, and when I went outside, even from up in the trees, I felt things looking down at me, all the shadows. I stared at them, and that was the feeling I got. And it was very strong. And, these things just gave me that sort of, I also had a lot of nightmares, of course, but I would say there were other times. Here's another example. Well, first I'll just quickly mention that when I got pushed off the bed, it wasn't just once. It was many times, okay? So it wasn't like this fluke thing where, he rolled off the bed. I'm telling you, I would swear under oath, no, I was pushed. And it seems crazy. But my father also had a story that when he was in the house alone trying to work on it, something pushed him down and made him bump his head on the floor. And the floor was concrete, okay? Cold tile and concrete. Well, so it wasn't just me. However, another incident that happened, I would often dream of being somewhere and there would be spiders. And there were, in fact, real spiders, of course, in the house. But one time I felt like they were crawling all over me, and I reached my hand up, this is what happened. I heard a pop because I reached my hand up, grabbed something, and threw it across the room. Well, then I did get up and turn the light on, and I had, in fact, grabbed a very large spider. I'm not sure if it was a black widow, but it was one of those that have like a really thick body, you know what I mean? Not like a thinly bodied, like a really enough to where it went pop when it hit the wall, splattered. So a spider was in fact on my face while I was asleep. And I guess feeling it or whatever, I grabbed it and killed it in my sleep, and then that's what woke me up was the sound of the pop. Well, these things happen quite a bit. Other weird things that happened in my childhood home is I distinctly remember before, mostly all this happened, as I say, when I was younger, okay? There was a closet with a very, very old door. And it had no doorknob, so you could see a dark hole where the doorknob would be into that closet. And everyone got a very odd feeling when looking at it and looking in and feeling like something was hiding inside there. We had rocking chairs in the living room that would sometimes be rocking on their own. You would be out of the house, you wouldn't even be in there, or people would be, spending time outside. You'd come back in alone. And as soon as you open the door, even the light was on, you'd see the chair rocking. And it's not one of those, the wind could have done it. Not an old wooden rocking chair, the more modern kind that, and plus there's no wind inside the house. And it was solid concrete and rock. This house, there was no wind, I promise. And other things that happened, doors would open. I remember doors opening on their own. They wouldn't close, okay? They would just open and then stay open, a crack open, not like flinging open. They would just unlatch and swing open, and I would be, hearing things from inside the darkness of the room where the light wasn't on and things like this. Other times we came home, and I thought perhaps there was some sort of vortex or magnetic or some sort of beacon of some type, because we would come home. And one time it was completely covered with massive red ants, and they all had wings. Now, if you've ever... I used to mess with ants, and these are very large ants, the red ants. They're not quite an inch, but I'd say a half inch long. These are big ants. So the queen is even larger, probably a full inch, okay, and has wings. Well, each, ant hive has a queen, or maybe 4 or whatever, maybe 5. I don't really know exactly, because I'm not really that into it. However, I know that from digging many, many ant beds up, there are never too many queens in there when I was young. However, one time we came home, and around our house, our yard was probably a full acre, or at least very close. The whole property was about 7 acres, but it was completely covered in queen ants. Covered like a carpet. You could not even walk to the house. You couldn't get to the house for all the ants. We had to stay somewhere else for the night because it was that wildly covered in bugs. And this was just like, that's just the way it was. And then a couple days, I think it was like a day or 2 went by, and then they were gone. So it's sort of like they were migrated there. This happened. The same thing happened with blackbirds every year. All the trees, all the leaves, the entire property would be covered with birds. And then at a different time, the entire property would be covered with monarch butterflies. Millions. I don't know how many, okay, but so many that you could not see any leaves on any of the trees. And we had lots of very large old trees. There were also lots of lightning strikes. It struck several of our trees and busted them in half. It was always getting struck by lightning. And snakes. There were lots of snakes. We found snakes that should not be indigenous to the area, such as coral snakes. This is West Texas, so of course there were lots of rattlesnakes. But there were other colored snakes, and then, the rattlers were not always on their own. They were often in the yard, and nobody else that I knew seemed to have this problem, but it was often that I stepped on snake or almost stepped on them and then realized it was a snake. I could have died. Some of those snakes are very poisonous. Rattlers can kill a small child, of course. If you get bit and you become paralyzed and it bites you a few times, whatever, and you don't get in the hospital, fast enough, this can happen. One of the other odd things that happened, and I was very young, I thought it would be just fun. We had black and white TV. We had very small, I don't know, we grew up kind of poor, so we didn't have like a lot of stuff. But so the point of that is we played a lot. Go play outside. We played a lot outside, okay? This is another reason why I ended up just looking at things, very closely, noticing things, and kind of maybe that helped open my mind. Maybe it was a good thing. However, I used my imagination a lot as well. And one time I was practicing throwing knives. Now, I'm not very good at making them, of course, but I had a small knife and then a screwdriver that I used to throw at a stump in the yard. It was probably, 30 feet away, something like that. And, I was pretty good at throwing, so I could hit the target, but I was not as good, I think, maybe as at flipping it or whatever, balancing it, whatever it is to make it stick every time. So I would always hit the target, but it wouldn't always stick every time. So, I didn't have the skill yet, but I was working on it. And one time I was throwing, I had a neon handled screwdriver and then I think it was orange, and then a regular knife, It wasn't really a throwing knife, but it was like a homemade knife, and it had no real handle, just the blade. And I threw it, and it bounced like a good 10 feet to the right into some bushes. Our yard was completely covered in very small, they called them whorehound bushes. And now that I think about it, they're very unique. We hated them. They covered the yard, and they were like weeds. However, since traveling around, I've never seen them anywhere else in the world. So I don't know what kind of bushes these were, but they grew like crazy on our property and nowhere else that I know of. So very unusual now that I think of it. Anyways, so yes, I threw it. It went into the bushes, and I thought, okay. I threw another one, my screwdriver, and it bounced to the left and hit our old homemade barbecue pit that's steel. And it was, one was 20 feet to the right, one was 20 feet to the left where they had bounced and tumbled. And I thought, well, I know this one hit the barbecue pit. That one's easy to find. It's also, neon handle, and it's right over there I could even kind of, the barbecue pit over there is easy, so I will go to the bushes and find the one so I don't lose the actual knife. And I went over there, and I was searching where I saw the bushes had moved, and where I thought it landed quite a ways in there, and I found the screwdriver, the neon handle, and I thought, well, maybe I just didn't notice, maybe, but I know the knife went over here. I remember, so I would just keep looking, and then I thought, no, that's not right, and so I went over to the barbecue pit, and the knife was over there, and I'm 100% certain that's not where they went. They swapped places. Where the knife landed and where the screwdriver landed, they switched. And I knew it in my mind for a fact. I immediately threw them down and went inside. And that was crazy to me. It left me with an odd feeling, okay? But lots of things happened growing up. I had some friends and I, when I was finally in high school, decided that, hey, let's go ghost hunting. Ghost hunting was probably just barely a thing, okay? There were no shows on TV or anything about it, but we had heard there was such a thing. I think we did know, like voice, electronic voices. We had an old software, I think in the 90s, called Gold Wave, and small tape recorders. This was tiny cassettes, if you are old enough to remember what those are, on a little handheld recorder. One of my friends had it. I didn't have enough money for this type of stuff, but he had a computer with that software and then the little tape recorders. We would go to the cemetery or to an old abandoned house or an old abandoned school or some old abandoned thing that had a church or something that had a story that it was haunted, and go there on Halloween or somewhere around fall season and to put it on record, leave it there, and walk away, walk around asking questions, just talking, hanging out for a few hours, then collecting it, going back to the house later and analyzing or just playing back the wave and see what you see what you hear. And my friend has the clips, but I guess there was humming, something that sounded like voices singing songs at one of the places. I think that was at the cemetery, one of the cemeteries. And there were some old places around. You might not think, oh, Texas and America, hidden history. It's super old. There was a church, supposed Spanish church from the 1600s, for example, there. We had an old fort from the 1800s there. Lots of things that I think were even older than what they said. I have more stories in future episodes about other old locations that we went to. But it's an interest of mine, and so do I think something's happening, something's there? Yes. What is it? I don't know. But definitely there are things that are just like in my dream theory, in my dream reality, something is felt that seems to be not controlled by myself. In other words, something besides me, something exists other than me. And I mean that in it needs study and it needs experience and first-hand account to believe it, probably. But I think if you do those things like I have and like I still plan to keep doing, you will understand and you'll know that yes, there are things out there. There are other energies or entities or whatever you want to call it. But it's worth, I guess, looking into and experiencing, even if it's scary. Dreams can be useful. I had a previous video, I deleted it off, but it was called Dreams Can Be Useful. Nightmares can be useful. These are things that are true, and we could somehow find out if we're interacting with another dimension, another realm, another stage of reality as we change consciousnesses, or if something's, bridging into ours, or if there's some sort of vortex, as I mentioned, or some sort of collection in certain locations, then those places, unusual phenomenon can be, experienced. And I don't know what the danger is, to be honest, other than when you're scared, there probably are chemical reactions happening as well as blood pressure and this and that, and maybe some sort of, over-excitation of the brain. These things could be stressful and probably unhealthy. However, there might be states of mind or outlooks to have that make it sort of worth it as an experience, just like going on a roller coaster. As Stephen King says, we go on roller coasters because we want to be scared. I read scary books and watch scary movies because we enjoy being scared. But why is that? It's probably because there is some sort of experience aside from entertainment, all right, that lets us open our mind, lets our imagination run. So next time you think, oh, scary stories, scary movies, those ideas are just childish, I want to say to you, this is not the case. Open your mind, use your imagination, be creative, and think. And we'll continue this conversation. Let's do it more often now that it's October. We'll talk more about this topic, and hopefully I'll have some guest speakers, but I'll leave it here and just know that there's more to come. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good night.